Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome to 5 and 9 in a one-stop co-op shop, where I go over 5 things you need to know about a game in about 9 minutes or less. I'm going to do my best. Today I'm taking a look at Tiny Epic Game of Thrones. This one is an area control dudes on a map style game where you are playing a House of Westeros from the famed Game of Thrones series. In this one, you're going to be establishing alliances, deploying your troops, getting into battles, and ultimately vying for supremacy of the land. It's a big map of Westeros, it's epic in scope, but the tiny part is the same little box, as well as some Euro mechanism that promises to keep the playtime at about an hour or so if you know what you're doing. So how does the negotiation and the combat work in this one? Does it do enough to realize its ambitious theme? And what does the expansion add with Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen? I'll answer all those questions when we go to the videotape. Disclaimer, I was provided a review copy of this game by the publisher. My number 5, a pro overall, is the Ice and Fire expansion, which adds cooperative play. So in particular, it's the Night King module that you're going to look for. So you have whoever you want to add in, and the expansion adds Daenerys and Jon Snow. So that's very exciting. Really, let's talk about the Night King. So this is an implacable foe that will start up north and then slowly make their way down, deploying White Walkers, filling the land with terror. Here are the difficult things. Number 1, it adds a bunch of overhead. It's going to go in between everybody's turn and also has turns after each round. So it is a lot of upkeep. It's very easy to miss something in the Night King's activation, which could kind of ruin your game. Number 2, the early game here is a little bit plotting. You see all these exploration tokens. The game is really telling you, go ahead and explore in order to weaken the Night King first, and then it opens up for strategy afterwards, but it does feel more constrained than the base game. I'll get to that in a second. And then there are the positives. Playing this game cooperatively, pure co-op, is really satisfying. You can interact among one another, give each other allies. That all works out great. The Night King module, for all of the overhead in order to run this thing, does provide that cinematic feel. You start off, you feel like you're never going to win, but then you build yourself up. You get them down, weakened in terms of the Explore tokens, and then you can get those cinematic moments. The Night King is invading King's Landing. The dragons are flying around. The characters are all having interactions that evoke the sense of the show. I can say it is the most epic experience that Tiny Epic has to offer in its whole line. But despite some of the difficulties I said, that part was super good. My number 4 is a mix. I almost went calm with this one, but I'm going to land it mix, is the Solo Bot, because the bones of it are constructed really well. You have the hero, the rival hero, and its troops. It's going to get allies and do a lot of the things that the players are going to do. Roll a die, flip a card, and even though this is a little bit busy, it does come together, and it is fairly easy to run and does, for the most part, simulate what enemies, real-life enemies, are going to do to you in a pretty simple way, which is impressive for a game of this complexity. However, when you get into playing the bot a couple of times, you'll realize that it has tendencies that are easy to figure out, and you can wall them off such that there will be a number of turns where the bot doesn't do anything. Either they're going to be kind of walking around and not accomplishing much on the board, or some of the bot powers call for allies. If you make sure they don't have any allies, which is not that hard, then that's another field where it won't do much. And it won't give you that satisfying challenge that brings you to the table over and over again, which is what solo fans are looking for. So to be clear, the rulebook has ways to make it harder, and there are a couple of tweaks that can kind of take out those null turns that the bot has. So it is very much close to being really effective, but as it is right now, a little bit of a struggle for me. For my number 3, I'm going to fold it all into an umbrella I'm calling tightening mechanisms, with 2 goals in mind. Number 1, that the game is under an hour or about an hour. If everybody knows how to play. With these area control dudes in a map game, that can really stretch as the tug of war happens. Here, you get 6 rounds and out, and the game does a bunch of things to make sure it is in a reasonable time frame. Also, a lot of catch-up mechanisms to make sure that hour you're invested if you play well. If you play badly, you're going to get nuked. But if you're not going to be subject to certain dice rolls or card plays, every player is going to be in it generally until the end. So a couple of things, like if two armies clash and one loses, then only one troop is lost. You don't get wiped off the map at any point. Also, you have a mechanism where if you lose a troop, it goes on your mat. You actually get a thing. So, you get a coin back or a card back or something else. You have these tokens. So if during the scoring round, you are not able to be in the lead, the last player is going to get a vengeance token. So they get extra victory points for being more aggressive and initiating combat. There's a lot else that the game bakes in to make sure that every single person at the table has a chance to win, is engaged for that hour that you're playing. Really well done. My number 2, a very significant pro, is the ally system. You can have a big dudes in a map game of Westeros and call it Game of Thrones, but I really feel like having the 4 NPC houses does so much to bring alive the theme and add unique mechanisms. From a mechanical perspective, these are troops that can be out in the field. If you claim allyship, then there's extra troops and that adds to your strength. So it isn't just, building up your own armies. You have a capacity to be able to, just recruit, and all of a sudden you have 3 new troops or 4 new troops, doing different things than you would do in a regular Dudes to the Map game. That also comes in the ally pool because these troops double as favor among the houses. If you have more than everybody else, then you get their allyship and their troops and castles, etc. That tug of war, that back and forth, both with the actions themselves through the plot action and certain cards that can have, timely reversals and, oh, you thought you were an ally, I'm going to betray you, and now that ally comes to me. Wow, it works out so well from a game mechanical perspective and also from a thematic perspective because you have the individual characters that can show up as troops, gives you a lot of chance for interaction, reliving moments in the series. Well done all around. My number 1 is a pro, but I'm going to give a buyer beware in this one. It is the core action system, dice and cards. You have 6 actions where you're going to do your marching and your recruiting, etc. They come off the dice, and then you can, on your turn, you select 2 of those actions, one that is on the mat and one that you rolled. And then everyone else will have a chance to follow the die action in particular with their own version of what that is. Complementing that is a whole suite of card actions. You're going to have some cards with some multi-use aspects, and the actions, I can say, really blow up if you use the cards. They're the same basic things, but you could do them at certain times, more powerful versions. Really well constructed. Here is the buyer beware part, though. I played a couple of games with this multiplayer where people really struggled with this. You don't have every action available to you at any time. You might really need a march action. You really want one, but it's not available to you. It's been closed off by your competitors. So you've been building up for a couple of turns. You think you can strike, someone shuts you down, and then that could feel really frustrating and deflating. Tiny Epic Game of Thrones is more about what the game gives you. Can you use that and work within it to the best of your ability, rather than these, big grand turns that maybe in a more classic Euro game you're used to. So here's the buyer beware. If you want a little bit of a looser action system where it's a little bit more focused on the board play and going where you want to go, this might not be the game for you. But if you want to work within this very well-built action system, then I can say there's definitely a lot to offer here. So here's one last point that I did not put into my main 5, but it is a question for the entire series. Did this one need to be so tiny? It is a big game, an epic game, and could it have benefited from a larger presentation? And this one, more than the other Tiny Epic games, absolutely. This one could have been twice the size, if not bigger, and given you more room to manipulate the pieces and get into all that world-sweeping adventure. So that's another buyer beware thing. There are people who might love this type of game, but just struggle with the tiny package. And so with that caveat in mind, I can say that Tiny Epic Game of Thrones achieves its goal, in my opinion, of being that big Westeros-sized world-spanning adventure, but within a small time frame because of those very tight Euro mechanisms. And then you add on top of that the Ice and Fire expansion, which I believe really adds to the epic scope and adding the cooperative play, etc. So if you're going to get the base game, in my opinion, if you're a co-op fan at all, or if the epicness appeals to you, then I think the Ice and Fire expansion is a no-brainer. So where does it rank overall in the Tiny Epic series for me? Y'all know I did my big video ranking the 12 at the time, and then there's been a couple more since then. I'll say that this one ranks in the top tier-ish of games. I don't know exactly where, or maybe you can tune in later in the year when I re-release my ranking video and see where this one lands. This is Jason with the One Stop Co-op Shop. I'm Marty, that we'll see you at the next stop.